Good evening, friends. My name is Ayush, as you guys know me, but for the people who don't know me, my name is Ayush. I'm one of the founding members of this community called Growth Folks. To talk about a little about Growth Folks is a community of growth enthusiasts and marketeers. We have been operational for quite some time in the ecosystem, and we have more than 1,000 plus people as a part of our Facebook group, and we have an offline presence in 9 plus cities of India. Today, we are starting off this new series, which we called as a Growth Wrap 2020. The idea of this series is as basic as we want to invite actually industry leaders on a fireside chat that is going to be an exclusive for this community. And the idea is to get out some detailed information about the entire industry and not just a particular brand or a company. Obviously, we'll be having a different conversation about brands as well, but this is a more holistic view on a industry point of view and how the whole industry has coped the pandemic, the pre-pandemic thing, the post-pandemic thing, and many more stuff. So from today onwards, you are going to see us live every day, at least, except the weekends at 7 p.m. and 8 p.m. And today we are going to talk about OTT industry. And for that, today I have with me Sourav. To talk a little bit about Sourav. So Sourav is a digital marketing professional with an entrepreneurial and growth mindset, currently leading digital marketing for Tata Digital Branding and Performance. Prior to this, he led digital marketing effort at Z5. Over 8 plus years of experience in helping brands launch, grow, and maximize their return on investment by holistic digital marketing solution with large and mid-sized company. He has experience working with clients from e-commerce, BFSI, telecom, OTT, B2B, and many other. Uh, First of all, thanks a lot for joining us today, Saurav. It's a pleasure hosting you.
Thanks, Ayush, for having me here. Looking forward to the session. Yeah.
Thanks a lot. Thanks for doing it on such a short notice. So, without wasting much of our time, probably I'll just start it off with a very basic question. And before I'll be asking you the second question, I have also done some small homework from my end for the viewers, so that yeah, I'll also try to present a few data so that the conversation goes on further. So,
Sure.
starting off with very first question, and for the basic question, I would say, what is OTT and what is OTT platform?
Absolutely. It's a very good questions, right? Because when this term came to India, right, very few people know about this, right? But it's the name term itself stands for over the top, right? Which implies that content provider is going over the top of existing internet services. So
Okay.
primarily, any television or movie content getting provided to the consumer over the internet at a request and which suits the requirement of an individual consumer. So it's like on-demand content over the internet. That is what is called as OTT in simple terms. And now, as you know, the market is full of OTT players, and currently we are having 40 plus OTT services available out there in India.
And can you think of a year wherein people started to know about this term OTT in India? Is there any year that you think that was the start of OTT era in India?
I think it started all with Hotstar. When the Hotstar got launched, that's where people got to know, and then Netflix come into the picture. At that point of time, people get to know about OTT as a vertical.
Definitely. And as I mentioned, so I'll just try to share my screen and show you guys some data. So we just got to, I have just gathered the traffic data for most of the OTT players that we have. And this data is updated till September 2020. So India's online video market is supposed to touch 4 billion by 2025. What's your idea on this, Saurav?
I think that's fairly right. There is another study as well by PwC, which commits similar kind of numbers, and the market is huge, right? With the kind of budgets, a lot of OTT players putting into the content, like Amazon, Netflix, they have designated 2,000 crores, 3,000 crores of budget standalone for the content creation and content buying, and then on top of that, the marketing budgets. So I think there is an immense potential out there. There are a lot many players out there, and with the internet revolution out there in India, with Geo being there, with Geo being expanding to the urban and the rural populations, I think with the increase in internet population, these numbers are very much doable and looks promising.
Exactly. And that's what the data shows as well. Like if you see at the prime, so this is the data for the prime videos worldwide traffic. And here we can see that India is completely having a major share of the market. And similarly, we have, and then comes the OTT players like Hotstar, wherein most of their market is in India. And that's where the entire competition begins, wherein players like Hotstar and Z5 come into picture.
Absolutely. And in fact, there is another stats, right? So by 2023, India is going to be like one of the player from Indian OTT market is to be top 5 in the world ecosystem, right? So that's the kind of potential India has at this point of time for OTT business, right? So I think there is a immense potential for growth out there.
Got it. All right. So moving on to my next question. So since we have been talking about how OTT has been taking the entire uh, Indian economy by storm, not just tier one people, but tier two people. So how is OTT different from content pipeline creators such as TVF, which are focusing primarily on millennial generation?
Right. So, so to start with, right, first we need to understand, right? So it's an ecosystem, right, where there are OTT platforms and then there are independent content creators and there are known content creators, right? So OTT primarily works on three business model, right? One is AVOD, which is advertisement is the source of revenue. There is a content which is available for free streaming, and the businesses make money by advertisement. The second one is the SVOD, which is subscription model, where a user or audience or customer has to pay certain amount of money in order to watch premium original and acquired movies, right? And the third one is the transactional video on demand, like which is like renting the movies or videos out there, right? So there are certain players which has been doing this in past, be it YouTube, iTunes, and lately Z5 are also getting into the stream with Zplex,
Okay.
right? So all these big OTT players are providing platform for users in terms of right amount of content, right quality of content across various genres, various age group, various taste clusters. So when I say taste cluster is something that every individual, every personal has a different taste in terms of content. Some might be interested in drama, some might be interested in thrill, some might be interested in comedy, right? So all these OTT platforms are catering that. Now, if we talk about players like TVF, which started way early, and there they have two core focus areas, right? So one is in terms of branded content, right? So TVF primarily focuses on short form content like Quota Factory, these type of content where they are associating inherently with the brands, and they are creating content which encompasses the story of the brand and goes out to the market. And the second core focus area for them is licensing their long form content, right? So now you can see with the plethora of platforms available, right? So content from known creators are always going to be there, right? And with the major players like Netflix, Amazon Prime paying big dollars to get the content from these platforms, right? So Sony Live has buyout tripling. There are certain shows which have been taken up by Amazon. Then Netflix has also taken up shows from them. So TVF is actually riding on these two things. They know they are good at creating content for youth audience, and there are very few players out there, right? So in fact, if I go back like few years back, there were very few options for Indian youth in terms of content, because the TV content and the film content are not enough for them.
Yeah.
And TVF just came into the picture at that point of time, and they just try understand the kind of requirement of content for these youth, and then they come up with those kind of stories, right? And there are many big stories. TVF Picture during the startup ecosystem was growing. So all of this relates very well to the youth audience, right? And then there are, we can see many more creators out there in the similar lines, being India, Screen Patti, East India Company. So all these have taken a ride over this niche, which is the content for youth. So I think it's primarily there are two differences. One is in terms of models, and secondly in terms of the content niche.
Makes sense. Totally. All right. So moving on to the next question, I would like to ask you that what are the challenges which you foresee with OTT leading and succeeding in the market?
Oh, so there are many challenges which I can see, but I would like to talk about few, right? So the very first core challenge which the industry is facing at this point of time, since the content is digital, is it's all about piracy. So even
Okay.
the film industry is struggling from this, and the similarly OTT industry is serving with a similar challenge, right? With so many content available across the ecosystem, there are so many content which are readily available. Even the paid content, there are certain apps out there which provides all the new original shows coming across the platform in one platform, right? So that's what is one of the core challenges which the industry has to fix, and there are a lot of tech interventions and platforms which are put into the place to curb this piracy threat. So I think that is number one. Like in terms of even live matches getting streaming on the various third party apps, that's a big blow to the revenue and the ecosystem as a whole. The second is in terms of the viewer retention, right? So now, if you look at the Indian OTT market, so currently there are more than 40 players out there in the market,
Correct.
and like, and to name few of the big ones, right? Amazon Prime, Netflix, Z5, Sony, Hotstar, right? But they are also even struggling to retain their users. The prime reason being the kind of content, because they have more or less some or the other hero content on the back of which they try to acquire the customer, and then eventually they don't have plethora of content in terms of retaining those customers. Second problem in terms of viewer retention is in terms of the quality and the experience you are giving to the users. So though Netflix is doing amazingly well, Amazon Prime is doing well, but a lot of Indian players are still struggling in terms of driving the right experience and right quality of content to the users. So when I talk about experience, right? So obviously there are a lot of content out there on the platform, but user don't have time. In today's
Yeah.
time, is very impatient, and they don't have time to discover the content out there. So there has to be a proper recommendation engine which understands the taste of the user, understand the taste cluster of the user, and then recommend the right amount of content, right? Because this happens with everybody, right? Over a weekend, what to watch is the very big question which comes to our head, right? So I think that's where the brand has to work so that they are able to retain their customers. That's the second problem. Third problem, which I see again, is in terms of the low lifetime value, right? So if you look at the current market, most of the big players are giving their content on a monthly pack of 99 rupees, right? So in terms of, if a user doesn't come back, they just come back, watch one particular movie, and then goes back, right? And then if some new content come on the other platform, then they go to the third platform and then start watching it. So there is a huge problem in terms of in terms of lifetime value, because the cost of acquisition, being in the digital ecosystem, you know how competitive the market is, how competitive the cost is. So the cost of acquisition itself is very higher, and on top of that, the kind of value which the user is giving not even compensate for the content and the basic operation cost, right? So that's the second challenge, and I think industry has started advancing in this direction, because now they have systems and technology in place in terms of auto renewals, right? So with evolved from Netflix, and now a lot of Indian players like Z5, Hotstar, all these players are moving into auto renewals. Second is the OTT as an ecosystem has evolved, right? So just like the mobile recharge, now you can also go to the platforms like Paytms of the world, and you can recharge your OTT. So there you can set up auto instructions, where whenever a monthly subscription gets over, it will auto recharge your monthly packs, and then these kind of features further enhances the retention.
Yeah.
Third is again with the use of big data, right? So there is a huge amount of data, and India is a very huge country in terms of content consumption, very like huge variety of content being pushed, right? So how the brands are using this data again to push them right content at right time, right? So all these things are going to make the user stick to the platform and help in improving the LTV. So that's the third challenge which I can see. And the fourth, very general one, though we have seen a great improvement in terms of internet penetration in India, but the infrastructure is still poor, right? Because the moment you travel from one city to another city, there are like erratic internet connections. In fact, sometimes during the pandemic, you also feel the internet connections are not that great, because India, though the penetration is high, but the internet speeds are still way behind the international markets, right? So I think with more players coming into the picture, with 5G getting rolled out in future, and then Geo Fiber expanding its base across India, these problems are going to get solved. So I think these are the 4 or 5 challenges which I can see at this point of time.
Got it. So during this the time you were speaking, you mentioned about few things, and I would like to ask you a little bit about the same thing. So you mentioned about the lockdown. So if you have to summarize how lockdown was, the entire pandemic thing has been for the OTT industry in a like in a bare minimum words, one or two line maybe. Let's say how would you
It's
sum it up?
it's I think it's a bad to say, but it's like blessing in disguise for this industry, right? It has just uh, content, and there is a tremendous consumption of content out there in this time, and people have consumed. We have seen growth as high as 4x to 5x
Oh.
within just those 2 months of lockdown. So I think the hunger for content at this point of time is very high at India during lockdown.
And to add to that, basically a lot of since you are talking about content, new form of content also came on the OTT platforms, and this brings me to the next question that during the lockdown, many producers launched their movies on OTT platform. Once normalcy returns, which we hope it soon. So, do you think OTT platform will still be able to retain them, or the producers will once again go back to launching their movies in theater?
Yeah, absolutely. So that's a very good question, right? So actually, it comes to everybody's head, right? A lot of brands are going direct to digital. A lot of production houses are going direct to digital. And what will happen to that post lockdown, right? Because theaters will be open, and then so see what I see this ecosystem is going to exist, right? Because if you look at in the past, right, when the movies were not launching directly on the digital, but after a month their digital rights were published, so movies were any which ways getting published on OTT platforms, and it is making losses for satellite business, but for OTT it was the same. But in terms of the new launches, now if you look about there, you have to understand the finances behind this, the financial maths behind this movie. So movies are of two kind, right? One is the budget movies, and the other one is the big scale movies, the big bag launch of the Khans of the world and the blockbuster movies.
Yeah.
And where the budget is as high as 150 crores, 200 crores, right? So at this point of time, none of the OTT players will be able to match that kind of a budget. But if I talk about the budget conscious movies and the content which is niche and which is like in the range of 30 to 40 cr, I think those content will still be there on OTT, will still be released directly on the OTT. And the fair bit of examples which I can give in the past is like the success of Gulabo Sitabo, right? It was a budget movie created in 30 to 35 cr, and it was able to recover as high as 60 to 65 crores,
Mhm.
right? So, and then similarly, Gunjan Saxena was a success, right? It was again a budget movies, and lately we can see Ludo on Netflix, which is again a great budget movies in this circle, right? So, I think for budget movies, OTT is going to provide a huge platform, huge amount of audience to the production houses, and they are fairly able to make money out of it and recover their production cost and everything. So I think it's not going to go anywhere. The platform will subside, the ecosystem will sustain, even if the theaters get launched.
Got it. Just a thought on the same, because since we were talking about the penetration of internet in India and comparing to the penetration of satellite televisions and all of these in India, I guess it still makes sense for them, not just satellite theaters and all of these things. I feel that it still makes sense, right, to for them to launch first on theaters, but I guess OTT is going to be an add-on power to them. That's how I see it. What do you?
Absolutely. So that digital rights is always going to stay. I think in terms of direct to digital, that is also
Mhm.
going to thrive. And just to give you an example, a very recent example, Z5 has come up with Zplex, where they have launched movies on a per view basis, right? So pay per view. So you have to
Mhm.
go, and if you want to watch Khali Pili on their platform, you just go and pay 199 rupees, and then you can rent the movie and watch it for 2 days, right? So even this kind of model is going to come up. People are the businesses are experimenting around it, and it can also be a future course of action for other OTT players.
Got it. Perfect. And every OTT player is, I guess, just trying to retain customers, but at the same time, they are acquiring the customer at double the speed. So, what do you think? Which segment is yet to be capitalized, and what are the roadmaps OTT could capture it?
Yeah. So to give you a context, right? So the very recent development, right? Like I said, right? If you look at the internet penetration we talked about, right? So currently there are some 205 odd million urban Indians and 227 million rural Indians, right? So now this number, the rural India internet penetration is like has surpassed the urban India, and that's where the potential is, and that's where a lot of players have identified. So when I talk about rural India, the very first thing which comes into the mind is vernacular content or the regional content or the local content, right? So I think that is going to be next big thing, because if you look at the internet consumption pattern, the language consumptions, all the local languages, be it Tamil, Telugu, Hindi, Kannada, the consumption of these kind of content across OTT industry has grown significantly in past 3 years, right? And this is showing the route. And with more budget phones coming into the picture, with more better connectivity in terms of geo, these markets are going to thrive. So the very first market which is going to be a very sweet spot for a lot of OTT players and is the regional market, and they are lining up with lot of regional content lineups, regional original content, and on top of that, the hunger for content in those markets is that high that they even tend to consume lot of dub content, right? So if there is a movie in Hindi, you dubbed it in Tamil or Telugu, those users will consume that content as well. So that's the kind of content dearth is out there. So I think a lot of players like Z5 having a stronghold out there, followed by Alt Balaji working in that direction, followed by Amazon Prime going heavily on the South Indian movies, right, to capture those kind of audiences. So I think regional is one aspect. Second aspect is, if I have to give you much detail, right? So see, is again pay per show or pay per movie, right? Which Zplex is trying to do. Now, if you look at the kind of audiences out there, there are primarily 4 to 5 kind of audiences, right? One is the digital only audience, right? So the user who only consume content on digital platforms, and they have cut down their cords and there is no access to television. The second is like tactical digital who still consume pay TV and at least one of the OTT services. Third is the bundle digital, right? So they are consuming pay TV and along with that some telco bundled content, right? The fourth category is the mass consumers, consumers who are purely watching TV and on top of that occasionally some free OTT content.
Okay.
And the fifth segment is the free consumers who do not pay for content, right? They want. So if I talk about the third and fourth, which is the bundle digital and the mass consumers, their concentrated volume is somewhere close to 500 millions. Now that's again a very huge pie which every OTT player is looking to harp on. Now the reason, as the name suggests, right? So they have at least one OTT service or they try to consume telco bundle content. So they are still not ready to pay big amount of money for content. And now if you consider there are 40 odd OTT players out there, on top of that 3 or 4 bigger ones, and for every service if you have to shell out 100 and 150 rupees, it's like if you subscribe to 4 or 5 OTT players, it's like 500 kind per month kind of a model. So that's not sustainable by, and that's not be affordable by a lot of this kind of category audience, right? So now the industry has to evolve and experiment with pay per content model where, let's say, if somebody if tomorrow Woot launches a one great original, you want to watch that original only, you can watch that original at certain cost, and it's like pay per show microtransaction model. So that is the another model which is going to come up, which where players are going to experiment and work out, because there is a huge potential with the 500 million kind of audience bit sitting at that. Third important piece, which again is thriving in India, is like sports OTT, right? So now, so far we all know IPL on Hotstar, but now lately with a lot of online fantasy games coming into the picture, Dream 11, MPL and all, right? So there is a huge interest of like people in India in terms of participating in fantasy leagues. So for that you need a platform, and that has risen opportunity for sports OTT, right? So now in fact Dream 11 is coming up with Fan Code, which is a sports OTT platform which will not only serve cricket, it will also serve all the other sports avenues, be it basketball, volleyball, etc. And then people can go and watch directly content from there and then reach out to the fantasy sports platform to make their bets and win money, right? So that's where, and lately we have heard in the last month, Amazon is also getting into the sports broadcasting. They have got the rights for India New Zealand series, right? So this space is also going to be interesting in terms of like the growth avenue for the sector. And one last piece which we have seen the growth in during the lockdown, because schools and all are shut, right? So there is a huge influx in terms of the kids content out there, right? In terms of I can say edutainment kind of a content, right, where the education and entertainment goes both hand in hand. And you won't believe there are 71 million Indian kids between the age of 5 to 11 which are using the going online with the help of their adults mobile phone or laptop, right? So this category has also seen a great jump since schools are shut. The students and the small kids are consuming educational content, learning content, short form content, entertainment content, and the platforms like Woot Kids, Eduora, Netflix Kids have thriving on that. So these are the 4 or 5 things which is still make sense, which where industries are ramping up and trying to tap these markets.
Interesting points you mentioned, and thanks for sharing it with us. Uh, talking about like, since we have been talking about the internet penetration and user bases as well, do you think is like what sort of geographical markets are OTTs actually interested in? Is there any specific?
So I think if we go back, I have already answered in the previous aspect, right? So the moment I spoke about the internet penetration in the rural market, the geographical preference is already clear in terms of opportunity. But in terms of the current ecosystem, I can tell you almost as high as 50% of the content consumption is happening from the top 5 metros, and remaining 35% from the tier 1 cities. So as high as like 70 to 75% of consumption is happening from these 2 cities. But now what is happening, that these markets are getting saturated, right? Because there are already so many players out there, and there is a huge demand of growth, and in terms of content, in terms of getting new users. So very fairly, the focus will now shift to the rural market, right? With which is going to be next big pie into the Indian OTT segment, right? And with the number which is as high as 227 million rural internet populations, these tier 2 plus tier 3 cities, these are going to be the next volume driver for us. And also how platforms are also focusing on these channels, both in terms of expanding to these areas, but also creating right quality of content, right? Be it TV soaps, be it reality shows, be it local language movies, be it mainstream movies. They are providing those kind of content to that, which can cater to this geography. And all of these contents are in vernacular languages. So I think Bharat is going to be the next mover in terms of geographical preferences.
Correct. All right, and you mentioned earlier when you were answering one of the questions that the overall pie is close to 500 million, right? Like,
correct.
Yeah. So, like, if 500 million, and you mentioned that 40 OTT players are there, so user acquisition becomes a little bit tougher. So, just recently, Netflix hosted its Stream Fest, which was free for users. Netflix gave them access to all the content for a couple of days without any credit card registration. And as per some reports, this helped them understand the user demography better, and at the same time get some user registrations as well. What are your views on this?
Absolutely. So this whole campaign around streaming fest, that the whole idea is to acquire new customers. And if I put some numbers into perspective, so currently Netflix penetration in India is less than 5% of the internet population of India. And to give you a comparison, currently it's 25% in US, right? So that's the kind of penetration, and they are serious, and that's where these kind of moves coming out, because they have been, though lockdown has supported, pandemic has supported their growth, but in terms of your consumption, in terms of getting new customers on board, they are still struggling, right? So they have forecasted a number of just some forecasted a number of somewhere close to 3.2 million new subscribers, and where they were able to only hit 2.2 million subscribers. So that's the kind of gap they had in the third quarter, which ended in like the data came in September. So that's where these kind of strategies are coming in, because they know if they have to get more new customers, they have to allow the content, the customers to sample the content on their platform. So it helps brand in two ways, right? So first is free sampling enables them the data of those subscribers or the customers, right? The email ID or phone number. So they can always go back to that consumer in terms of their offering. Secondly, from the data, they also try to understand the kind of sample content and the taste clusters of those users, what kind of content these guys are interested in, so that they can create right kind of content to cater these new audiences and to take them on board onto the platform. So I think this is going to stay. And it's not that Netflix has done it in past. The players like Alt Balaji, Z5, they have tried giving first free episode to the consumer so that they can watch the content, sample the content for free, and if they are interested in the content, then only they go and pay for it. So it's like the user journey they are trying to build, and I think it's going to stay. And if they have to grow, they have to keep experimenting with these kind of campaigns.
Got it. Understood. Thanks for answering this. And since you mentioned right now we have been talking a lot on the B2C front, and we have been B2C front, and we have been talking about how the user acquisition happens. So talking a little bit about partnerships, how big these various B2B partnerships help OTT players in order to cater to their particular metrics.
Yeah, that's a very good question, right? I think we being marketeers, we focus a lot on B2C kind of acquisition, but for business, the real growth come from the B2B partnerships, right? So, and that's what I have learned in my experience with Z5, right? So now if I have to define the B2B partnerships, right, that's is of four kinds, right? So one is the partnership with telcos. So now you can see that all the telecom players, be it Vodafone, be it Airtel, be it Jio, they club their monthly packages along with the OTT subscriptions, right? Somebody is offering Netflix, Jio is offering Netflix and Amazon Prime Video. Vodafone is had done tie-up with Z5 and Amazon Prime Video, right? So that kind of telcos partnership, now how it helps businesses. So now it's like the telcos are creating the data, right? And then there has to be consumption for that. So it's a very win-win partnerships for them, right? Because the more data that people consume, only when they watch more content on their platforms. So they are providing that as a free feature to the users so that they get onboarded, they consume a lot of amount of data, and then that will also increase the stickiness. Right. But how it helped the businesses, the OTT business, because now they have done certain kind of partnerships in terms of pay per content, right? So every time a user stream one content from those platforms, the OTT players will get paid from the telcos, right? So that kind of partnership is creating volume. And the kind of volume of data these telcos are sitting, right, 150 odd million, 100 odd million kind of users. If a small pie is as low as 10 to 20% of users start consuming, that's a huge volume for both the businesses, right? So that is partnership with telcos. Second partnerships is in terms of OEMs, right? So now if you look at all the hardware manufacturers, be it smart TVs, be it smartphones, right, be it gaming consoles, everywhere you will find these apps are pre-installed, right? So that's again giving a gateway to the users. Look at, you can directly consume the content from them, right? And sometimes they go beyond and provide certain kind of special offers, like Netflix on certain mobile sets is available for free. Third piece which I see is the partnership with the TV and broadband players, right? So in terms of, you can see the partnership with DTH operators, the partnership with Tata Sky, right? These kind of partnerships where you are integrating the softwares into the set-top box and they can access it from there. That's the third kind of partnerships. And the fourth partnership is like cross-platform partnerships, right? So again, like I said, there is a huge demand of content, but there is a lot of content cost and a lot of budget which goes into the content acquisition, right? So a lot of partners are partnering, like Z5 and Alt Balaji. Together, they have partnered to create 60 odd original content throughout the year, right? So they are like creating the common content which will be getting served on both the platforms, and it's upon the users where how they are trying to acquire the users and whoever wins the race, right? So these kind of the four partnership models, which is helping the ecosystem both ways in terms of increasing the subscriptions, increasing the new subscribers, and also increasing the data consumption for the telcos, right? So that's how the B2B business or B2B ecosystem is driving growth for OTT players.
Got it. And I believe OTT platforms have a very immense and lovable relationship with the content creators, I feel, because if you see the amount of content that has been now started to coming up on all of these OTT platforms, from all of these content creators like Bhuvan Bam, Zakir Khan, and all of these, I guess this has also boosted in their word of mouth has been out there because of the same.
Absolutely, like I mentioned for TVF, the branded content, right? The line of business which they get into, right? They very, and now all the digital brands are very open to experiment with these content creators, and these are going to get new boom to the entire ecosystem, right? They are earning, and they are just earning in crores, right? The kind of money been putting into the create these kind of content, and on top of that, the players like YouTube, Facebook, they are also creating ecosystem for these content creators so that they can go, they can learn, they can grow, and they want more such content creators to stay afloat, right? So it's in the interest of both the content creators
Right.
and also the platforms. So I think there's going to be a huge potential over there as well.
Got it. All right. Now the next question is a little bit from a viewer standpoint. So I also watch a lot of content on OTT, and I'm not saying for all of us, but let's say if I just speak about myself, why I like the content is because the content is raw. And when I say it raw, it's mostly uncensored. And with the recent news that came few weeks ago, that now censor board would be keeping an eye on OTT platforms and the content going on OTT platforms, this is surely going to be a setback for all the OTT players, because now the kind of shows, the kind of reach, the kind of publicity that they were getting because of launching all of these contents is now going to get hampered. So what's your views on this? How do you think this whole OTT industry is going to react to this?
Yeah, so there is a lot of news going around that there is going to be a censorship, but there is no final decision as such on that. But I will give you some context around it, right? So, firstly, like you said, because you like OTT because the content is raw, right? And there is a creativity freedom out there, right? And there is a lot of experimentation being created by a lot of digital content creators and production houses, right? So that's what where the innovation is there. That's what's the strength of OTT players. So now what I see with this thing, and all these censorship and all these are primarily motivated by like politics or society influence. These kind of things create these kind of situations, right? So now I think the industry has to focus and move into some kind of a self regulation code, right? So I think currently, if you look at in the past, all the OTT platforms have their own regulation models and all own disclosures and all those things, but there is no uniformity in the entire ecosystem.
Right.
So lately, under the chairmanship of Mr. Tarun Katyal, who is leading the IMI part of the India, they have created a self-regulation check, right, where they came onto the table, and all the OTT players have agreed to certain rules and guidelines in terms of enabling the users, in terms of like giving consumers more choice and control, right? Telling them more about the framework of the age classification, the content description, whether it's violence, the content is having violence, sex, those kind of information. Parental controls are being given in terms of on top of that, there are grievance redressal systems, right? So where any particular person who is finding those content difficult or it's hurting their sentiments in any way, they can always raise a grievance on that, and then there is a different committee who looks after that, and there are also third party auditors who can work with these platforms to help in terms of self regularization. So I think that is going to be a future. And again, like I said, there are a lot of industries, food industries also follow similar kind of route. So I think it's not going to be a big challenge. The decisions are yet to be made, but government has clearly said that they want to have some control, but not in terms of censorship. So I think that's how the situation is going to be for in terms of censorship in the OTT platform. So not to worry, I think there will be no loss of creative freedom. You will still be getting those kind of content out there.
All right. Thanks for clarifying this. I guess not only just me, but a lot of people, I suppose, were having the same question, I would say. Now, this brings us to like last three questions are left. So I would like to ask you one by one, and these are some sort of questions which are specific to your views. No one has to do anything about this. So, like, if we have to talk about the trends, you already have mentioned a lot of trends which we saw, and you talked about numbers, the numbers during the pandemic, once the first lockdown was lifted, and over that. What is that one trend which you are seeing currently that excites you the most and which you look forward to? Is there any upcoming trend or the ongoing trend?
So I can give you there a couple of trends, but I can give you one very great example, right? So if you remember, right? So when Hotstar get launched, so Hotstar started with this proposition: watch it on your own, right? So because they are moving from television to a mobile phone, right? So because there is in a lot of Indian houses there is one television set, and everybody wants to see the choice of content of their own, right? So but lately what we have seen, then there is again a shift from smartphone to smart TV, right? So this is the trend which is going to be a big game changer, both in terms of OTT platforms and also in terms of marketeers. So now what we have seen in recent past, that at least in urban India, and now the trend is also catching up in tier 2 and tier 3 cities, because of the lot of innovation and the price comfort in terms of smart TVs available in terms of MI, and all those brands are making the smart TVs very cheaper and affordable for people.
Yeah.
So now what we have seen, that a lot of people have started consuming content on the smart TVs, because it gives you a better experience in terms of watching the content on bigger screen, the sound quality and everything, and it's altogether a much better experience, right? So that trend, and what we have seen, the consumption, the content consumption duration is as high as 2 hours and 3 hours on connected TVs, right, and smart TVs. So that's going to be a game changer for OTT players. So now with this trend, a lot of OTT players are spending a lot of investment to making their experience much better on smart TVs and connected devices, so that there are seamless content consumption happening on those platforms. And then they're also creating content which are more family oriented, which can be watched together on these bigger screens, right, in tier 2 and tier 3 cities, right? So that is going to be a next big explosion in terms of a trend which is going to change. And there is a rapid growth in terms of connected TVs for OTTs, and same options opens up for the marketeers, right? Because now a lot of marketing budgets getting into TV and getting into digital, right? So this gives you a very right platform to reach out to the very targeted set of audience in a big form of screen, right, where you don't have to target them via small mobile ads or small desktop ads, right? So it's a very unique trend which is coming out, and it's going to be a game changer for the entire television sector and digital sector.
Got it. And I forgot to announce this, but the Q&A session, the Q&A portal is live for everyone. So you guys can go ahead and shoot your questions which you want Saurav to ask. I have already got a question from Paran. So he's asking that one of the idea I like is to partner with brands who may share few of their branded content only on a particular OTT platform. We are creating a new platform where makers and startups product videos from YouTube Fest will be displayed. I have a query. How can we engage and attract visitors to visit our web platform?
uh, so if can you help me understand the question, Paras, a bit, because
Parin,
I didn't understand the model.
Parin, now maybe you can talk as well. I have just given you the access. Please go ahead.
Hello, sir.
Yeah.
Hi.
Yeah, sir, it's a really interesting event. Actually, we are creating a web platform wherein we would be having project videos of startups and makers.
Parin, can you be a little louder? Sorry, if you don't mind.
Yes, sir. So we are creating a web platform wherein we will be having an interface where the videos of many startups and makers would be put up. So we wanted to know how we could create some engagement to attract the audience to come and look at our website. And
Absolutely. That's a very great platform you guys are coming up with, Parin, and congratulations on starting up on this. So I have two thoughts, right? So you have to first understand that you are trying to reach out to entrepreneurs, right, who are excited about consuming these kind of content. So now doing certain kind of partnerships with platforms who are into this content storytelling for startups, right? Like your story out there, there are many more platforms who are talking about startups. So how can you go and collaborate with them, and you can get their users consume your content on your YouTube channel or on your platform. Second is also doing certain kind of partnerships from the like entrepreneurship forums, right? So there are a lot of entrepreneurship forums out there. How can you go and do partnerships with them so that they can provide your free subscriptions or a paid subscription model to their budding entrepreneurs? That's the second aspect. You can go and reach out to the entrepreneurship cells across the top colleges in India. Third is again using the social channels, the digital channels. You know who are your target audience, who are your inspiring entrepreneurs on Facebook, on LinkedIn. How can you push and go back to those users via those platforms to create awareness about your platform? So I think there are many more avenues which can be opened up in terms of partnerships, in terms of getting users attracted to your platform. But these are the top three which comes to my head at this point of time.
All right.
sure, sir. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Karin. Yeah. All right. So meanwhile, we get some few questions. I have one question that like our one of the participants has asked us on Instagram. So they want it's the question is one liner. It's basic. Is OTT going to make sure that the D2H that we have right now is going to go dead, or is there still life available for D2H to survive?
I think it's too early to comment, but I think it's going to definitely give a huge dent, because now, at least in urban India, we have seen the trend of cord cutting, right? Now, the reason for that, why it's not happening at a very rapid pace, but because still a lot of the Indian population is still dependent on D2H. The OTT penetration is not that high. The internet penetration is not that high. But definitely with the digital India movement, with the geo movement, with the geo fiber movement getting into the villages and rural India, it is going to be very tough for D2H industries. And I think they have started already realizing it, and that's why you can see Tata Sky has come up with their own OTT packages, and software has been enhanced to that, right? So it's like the market will evolve. Definitely they will also evolve. Everybody will be there. Internet and satellite TVs are going to go coexist at this point of time.
Got it. And talking a little bit on the professional front, for anyone who is going to join the OTT sector as a fresher, maybe, or an experienced folk, what would be your suggestion to them? Like a marketer who is going to join the marketing team of any OTT platform, what would be your
I
guide?
think you should definitely read a lot of blogs which are out there in the space, which talks about OTT as a space. There are a lot of certain studies which are being put up by BCG and the price for PwC and all around the OTT industry. So those can be referenced. Thirdly, what I would recommend is that there are a lot of social media blogs, social samosa and all, right? You can also learn what kind of creative enhancement in terms of social media promotions, in terms of tapping the users and making them aware about the original content. They are doing innovative ways, right? So you can read a lot about their to understand how OTT is growing. Thirdly, you yourself as a user, right? Because we know that our generation is using a lot of OTT platforms at one go, right? So if there is a new content on Voot, we will go over there. If something new over there on Netflix, we'll binge watch over there. So you can yourself also understand that how the OTT platforms are evolving, what are the changes, small changes they are doing onto the platform. So I think that is going to be these three aspects will definitely help you and make you more aware about the OTT industries, and rest your basic still remains the core.
All right. Thank you for answering that. We have got a question from Ameya. What's the approximate revenue share of in-app ads for any OTT platform? And what's the future of ads? Google's 80% revenue and Facebook's 90% revenue comes from ads. Do you think it's still unexplored?
No, it's not unexplored. Like I said in the beginning, every OTT player works on three models. So one is the AVOD, where the advertisement video on demand. And the core proposition over there is that all the content, the television content, are available for free to stream, and the OTT platforms make money via the ads, like the pre-roll ads or the mid-roll ads or the display ads, right? So they are already exploring. They also contribute to a decent share of revenue for the OTT players, right? If I have to tell you, subscription business directly where you are paying the content, but ad revenues is as high as 30 to 40% of the business coming out from the AVOD side of the things, right? So it's not unexplored. In fact, it's evolving. They are learning from the players like Google and Facebook. So now you can see a lot more new ad units out there in terms of mastheads, in terms of personalized targeting, in terms of targeting users via influencers, because every content has some or the other protagonist, right? So you can also tap on to them and create new ad formats out there. So this industry has been growing. And now the challenge with this is that Google and Facebook has established themselves with over so many years. So the measurement is still a struggle, where all these OTT platforms are evolving, partnering with a lot of third-party measurement partners like Nielsen and other players, DAR, to come back, right? So that is going to help further to this ad market.
Got it. I hope you got your answer, Amey, and that was really interesting question. Thanks for asking and thanks for answering this, Saurav. We have got another question from Prerak, and it's a follow-up question what Pareen asked. You mentioned to reach out to entrepreneurship forums, e-cells to partner with and share the free subscription with them. Can you explain a bit more?
Absolutely. So the idea over here is, see, the content is designed for a niche, right? Where you are trying to reach out to the entrepreneurs. Now, the whole idea behind this approach is that all these entrepreneur cells, right? They have a huge pool of entrepreneurs, and they are incubating huge pool of entrepreneurs in one of the other projects. And they always struggle with some or the other problems in scaling up, in creating efficiencies, right? So the whole idea is, how can you partner with them and get access to that database, right? And then you can always share your platform with those platforms via them, because now if the governing body is the entrepreneurship cell, and if they recommend something to their fellow entrepreneurs, right, I think that's going to make a lot of sense for them. And if the content is good and if they find it relevant, they are again going to recommend by word of mouth, and they are going to share with other entrepreneurship cells, and it will gain traction. So that's how the idea I was talking about.
Prerak has the answer.
I hope Prerak does this. This should help, or you can always reach out to me separately if you want more details about it.
Perfect. And yeah, this brings me to the final question, and which is the most easiest question that I'm going to ask. What are you watching these days?
So I think I watch a lot of content on Netflix. Lately, I watched the Kargil Girl on Netflix last, and there's been a lot of new content which is also coming up. So I'm looking forward to that. A couple of movies. Durgamati is coming on Amazon, and one more movie is coming on Netflix, Torbaz. So I'm looking forward to those in the coming weekend.
All right. So yeah, this brings us to the end of session. Thanks a lot, Sourav, for being such a sport and being on the fireside chat with me. Uh, I know it was a short notice stuff, but glad that you made it. Thank you.
Absolutely. Thanks a lot, Ayush, for inviting me. I think I really love the conversation and the kind. I hope it helps the forum. It enlighten them more about OTT and make them excited about the OTT business.